Are you curious about Gestalt language processing? You are not alone. Join me, Corinne Smoose, and speech therapy PD for our podcast, The Gestalt Get Together. Our episodes try to balance the enthusiasm and excitement about GLP and its associated intervention ideas, as well as a healthy dose of skepticism about how to understand and integrate this paradigm shift into your career and the field at large. We hope that you can get together with us to learn more about Gestalts.
Welcome to the School of Speech podcast, presented by SpeechTherapyPD.com. School of Speech is designed specifically for the school-based SLP to come together to discuss current topics, tackle difficult situations, and share our insights. Our goal is to bolster confidence, celebrate our triumphs, and foster a community dedicated to the excellence in the school setting. Hello, welcome everyone. I am so excited. I'm Carolyn Dolby and I am SpeechTherapyPD.com's podcast host for School of Speech. School of Speech is designed for all of us school-based SLPs so we can come together. We're going to explore current trends, share our insights, really champion our expertise. Our goal today, we're going to bolster our confidence, celebrate our triumphs, and foster a community dedicated to the excellence in the school setting. Today's episode is Fun and Function, Where to Begin When You Don't Know Where to Start. It's all about navigating those challenges of providing speech therapy for students that have those low-incident disabilities, cognitive delays, and complex medical needs. I am thrilled to have two powerhouse guests today, Melissa Neece. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. Melissa Neece and Rachel Grinnell. They are here to share their expertise. They're going to be walking us through the process of crafting meaningful, achievable goals. They're going to uncover some latest research-based practices and introduce therapy activities really tailored to the unique needs of this population. So if you have ever felt unsure of where to begin, this episode is the roadmap for you. But before we get started, we settle in for a minute. I've got a little housekeeping. So just so everybody knows, our episodes are 60 minutes and will be offered for ASHA 0.1 CEUs. And let's get started. I know a little bit more. Let's go into some of our disclosures. Melissa and Rachel are receiving an honorarium for their participation from SpeechTherapyPD.com for their participation today. And both Melissa and Rachel do not have any non-financials to disclose. For me, I am a salaried employee of Portland Public Schools. I receive compensation for my graduate courses I teach at the University of Houston, and I am a consultant for school districts across the nation supporting their program development and staff training on all things feeding and swallowing. And I also receive compensation from SpeechTherapyPD.com for hosting School of Speech, Dream Job. For non-financial, I've been a member of TISHA, Feeding and Swallowing Task Force, volunteer for Feeding Matters, and I'm a member of ASHA Special Interest Groups 13, 14, and 16. Enough about me. I want you to know a little bit more about Melissa and Rachel. Melissa has been an SLP in Plano ISD for 17 years. She started her career at high school, loved secondary, and has experience working with kids, though, across the ages and across settings. Her love for working with students with significant and complex communication needs really started early in her career because she had some wonderful, incredible mentors and really, she says, incredible kids. She joined her district's assistive technology team 7 years ago and has been able to live her passion every day since. I love hearing that. Melissa is dedicated to making sure that all her students' voices are heard and that they have an effective communication system. And she spends her non-work hours traveling, crafting, and spending time with her kids. And Rachel, also from Plano, this is your 10th year as an SLP? Yep. She started her career also in high school and has experience working with kids of all ages and again, across settings as well. Her passion has become helping students with significant and complex communication needs. And she is currently in her third year on the Access for Communication. That is her district's assistive technology team. So cool. She also works on an early childhood campus in Plano. Rachel is a firm believer in fostering independence as soon as possible. I love that with her students. And on the side, she enjoys working out, spending time with her family, and her new dog, Eddie. I love that. Welcome, Rachel, Melissa. How are you?
Thank you for having us. Yeah, we're doing great. Ready for
Oh,
Thanksgiving tomorrow.
same. We are so blessed to talk about blessings. We're blessed to have you. I know we want to get this party started, but I'm thinking, where should we begin when we don't know where to start?
Yeah, that's a good question, Carolyn. That is a question that I asked myself probably 2 years, my first 2 years out of, in my first job at high school. That's what I lived. Coming out of grad school, I didn't get high school experience, especially kids with complex communication needs, kids with low incidence disabilities. There was none of that in grad school, unfortunately. I love when our students come in now from a close grad school that we have, and we're able to give them that experience because at least they get something. So it's hard to walk in and not know what to do, and you feel so just you're not at ease about it. You have no idea what to do, but hopefully this will help us get some ideas.
I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. So I want to know, so we're starting with low incidence. What is the most important thing we need to do just out of the gate?
I think for me, when I have a kid come and I hear about a kid coming down the pipeline through our early childhood assessment team, and they have a disorder or disability that I've never heard of, I think the first thing I do is go and look that up, which also makes it very complicated because sometimes there's a lot of information and sometimes there's not. I have a student right now. She's one of 300 people in the world with her disability, with her disorder, and that's it. So what's going to happen? I have no idea. What are her communication skills capable of? Every day is a guess. But that's the same for doctors, for parents, for everybody. And I think that's one of the toughest things is that you can, the first thing you got to do is go learn about the disorder, but sometimes it's really hard to find information on it.
Right. I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I think we as all being speech pathologists, I think we're puzzlers. We like to puzzle. We like to figure out what is going on. And I love that because we're all on that Google. We're all like, what is that? Right? I love that. So, okay, we need to figure out what is the disability? Where do we go from there?
Well, I have a kiddo currently, and he, Rachel, because she has her early childhood experience, or she's on an early childhood campus, we kind of can anticipate or know that these kids are coming down, but sometimes we just get them and they show up, right? So I have a student and he's in high school. I think he's like 16 years old. He showed up from Venezuela about a month ago, right? And so he doesn't speak the language. He probably doesn't understand much of the language, I presume, but he's complex in all of his disabilities. And I would say that, maybe they're not as 300, right? In the whole world, they're not as exclusive, but he definitely has his challenges, right? So, right now it's like, it's figuring out what does he know? Is he properly placed, right? Like, because we've got the language barrier. He's not ever been in school because in his country, he didn't have the same resources that we have. And so it's determining, what does he know, right? And can I assess in a way that's going to show somebody in the district that he's either properly placed in a class for his cognitive abilities, or he needs to be someplace higher, right? So, I think that we can Google because we haven't heard of him, but in the instances when we have, and he's got cerebral palsy, but he's also visually impaired, and he also has, so on and so forth. We start with what are our preferences and what's our current functioning level, right? And it's Rachel and I have done some assessment or some trainings on some assessments that I think are a lot of fun, because really, like, it's looking at what they can do and what potentially is motivating for them in ways that maybe are a little bit more unconventional or not necessarily things that you think of. So starting with, those kind of informal assessments is definitely, once you've WebMD'd it or you Google it, right? Working on some of those, like in our district, we use the communication matrix, and I'm not sure. I think Rachel and I don't want to speak for Rach, but when we've given our presentation on this topic, there's a lot of back and forth. So I don't know if your audience is typically used to engaging in that way, but you guys, if you're familiar with these assessments or you've got assessments that you've used with this population, feel free to chime in and Carolyn can share with us. But, we use Every Move Counts and communication matrix and a lot of observations and, stuff like that to get us started.
I'm just going to put, you said Every Move Counts, and I know the communication. I haven't heard of Every Move Counts though.
Oh, that's a fun one.
I need to get in on that as well. Yeah,
you definitely get
okay,
on
I'm going to get in on that. I'm going to actually Google it too, but I just popped that in the chat too for those. So those of you listening, if you want to pop in the chat, if you have an assessment that you use with your complex kiddos, please jump in and let us know, and I will bring those up if you have anything to share with us, because I love this. I love the fact that speech pathologists, as much as we feel siloed a lot of times, we really are a community when we get together and we want to share. We want to share our goodies, right? I love it, because I think we truly believe that all kids benefit, and not just our kids. We want all kids to benefit. So I'm hearing that so we're starting with assessing. And what I heard you say, and I love it because this was so impactful to me, is when you said, we need to find out what they can do. Because I'm sure parents hear what they can't do and they know what they can't do. They want to know what they can do, because that's really where we need to start. So I think, okay, when you don't know where to begin, where do you start? You start with, what can they do? Boom. God. Oh, Kimberly, thank you. She jumped in and said they use formally vowels that the district supplies and informal measures. Exactly. Thank you, Kimberly. A lot of informal measures, I think, is in this population. Sure. Yeah. So, okay. So we've done the assessment. I love the fact that you also indicated, Melissa, that you want to make sure they're in the right placement. There's a lot of different placements.
Yeah. Particularly with this friend that I have, I think because there's that second language barrier, and the staff is seeing stuff. The staff has seen stuff that maybe implies that he probably has a lot more going on in there. But Rachel, wasn't there an assessment when we did that conference about a month ago that somebody had suggested, and we wrote it in our notes and we were going to look into it? Do you remember what that was? There was another one, Carolyn, because we were invited to a conference to do a presentation, and again, collaboratively like this, one of the participants had shared something, and I don't know if I thought we wrote it down, but maybe we didn't.
Yeah, it's called the Hawaiian Early Learning Profile. I haven't had a chance to look into it, but it sounded really interesting. Even if it's not a formal thing, just use it as an informal measure. But the really cool thing about Every Move Counts is that it looks at every sensory processing system, and it helps you kind of develop how these kids process the world. So, which is great for just any student. So many students have sensory needs anyways. It looks at taste and smell and sight and proprioceptive and vestibular systems. And there's all these different things that you can look at. They have lots of different suggestions for things to try. If they're in a wheelchair, push them in a circle, push them forwards and backwards. Do you get different reactions while doing that? If you put something that vibrates on them, we call it the vibrating noodle. It's a long piece of foam that vibrates. So we wrap it around the students and see, do they have a reaction? My favorite thing is using one of those like $5 head massagers, that you can buy at Walmart or off Amazon or whatever. They go on your head and they have all the spikes. Well, no, they're not spikes, but the pieces of metal that come down, and It's always my go-to recommendation, because I don't care if a kid hates it or loves it, you're going to find out either way. So they're going to have some kind of reaction to that, as do I, and as would anybody else. So at least there's something. I think one of the challenges that we have working with this population is a lot of people say, well, they don't do anything. Well, I think you just haven't tried hard enough.
Yep.
And that's a really hard thing too, right? Like, it's so hard to you don't just wake up knowing what you're supposed to do. And I think that's a really hard thing. There is research out there about this population. It's not a lot, and it's very hard to find. And it's hard. The best thing in the situation obviously is experience, like with most anything, but the more experience you have, the better you do. But I've been doing this for 10 years and I still hear about kids, and I hear, from the assessment team, hey, this kid came in, this is what they're doing. And I still go home at night and worry about, well, how are we going to learn to communicate? Like, I don't know what to do. And I haven't even met the kid yet, but yeah, you just got to try something new. If you tried something and it didn't work, try again. That's a big takeaway, I think.
And I heard somewhere that they said, somebody once said that wise people know what they don't know. Right?
Yeah.
So, and because and it's also safe to say, okay, to not know, but you don't end there. You
Right.
then, you can't just say, oh, I don't know. You then need to go, where could we go? Where do we go and reach out for that?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, I was going to say, I think one of the first stops when you don't know is just going and talking to parents. And if if you're doing the initial assessment or the initial ARD meeting, I always talk to parents. I always ask parents, well, what do they like now? Because maybe when our assessment team did the assessment, their likes or dislikes have changed, right? Maybe they've stayed the same, but maybe I can get more information. So I think the first stop is just talking to parents. And you also can, you can gauge what the parent knows and what they don't know. Because what I find is that at parent-teacher conferences, talking to parents, emailing parents, sending parents videos of things that we do, the teacher, we work very collaboratively with the teachers on our campus, and we're so grateful to have great teachers who want to communicate with us and share in all of our needs. But I think even just sharing with parents what their children can do. I think a lot of times parents are surprised and they're like, oh, they can do that. And that's why independence is so important to me, because I want these kids to live up to their full potential. And in order to do that, we got to get them, we got to get as much independence as soon as possible, because we got to let parents know, hey, they can actually do this. They can feed themselves, or they can, they can grab things off the table and do things themselves. And maybe they're never going to be someone who can put something in a container, or maybe they're never going to be someone who can cut their food. But you give them a fork with a preloaded bite and they can pick it up and feed themselves. And that's huge versus, being at a restaurant and having a 16-year-old be hand-fed by mom when they can feed themselves. You could increase that independence, and it opens up a whole lot more, and a whole lot more communication too.
I love it.
I think starting with parents.
You're speaking my language with feeding, because that is my specialty, and I love it. I love it. Exactly. And that is a big strength, and I find that with these special populations, that a small strength is huge. And if they could do everything, they would. They're not choosing this, they're not choosing. And I always say that when I'm talking with staff about students that need to have a modification of their meals. No one chooses to be on a puree diet. No one wants that. And so we've got to support that and not yuck their yums. So yeah, I think celebrating those small, I think it's really important. What I heard you say too is sometimes the parents might not know it is a strength. And that also builds their they want to be proud and love their kids, which they do, but it just gives them more things to celebrate. I love it. Thanks. I just want to say Kimberly also added another assessment, although she did preface it that it is long and takes a long time to complete, but it's the ABLLS I'm assuming that maybe you call it ABLES. I'm assuming. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, we use the VB map, which ABLES
Oh.
was first, and then it split. The two they split, and so one of the guys after did ABLES did VB map. And yes, so I think that that first level of the VB map would fall into an appropriate assessment for it. It is lengthy, but what's great about that is what I love about VB map is it'll give partial credit for some tasks, right? So maybe they can't do it 5 times, they can't, mand, or they can't tact 5 times, but they can 2 times. And so that's an emerging skill, and then you can build from there, right? But I think, and so that's great for goal writing, right? Like, so that kind of moves into our next piece with the every move counts and the communication matrix, and even the VB map, or some of these informal things. The next step is asking, okay, well, now what, right? Like, so we've got this assessment data, and what are we going to do with it? And I think, when Rachel was saying, talk to the parents again, and particularly in secondary, because we're getting to the point where graduation is only 5 years away, right? And panic sets in. And so, academics, they're kind of like, well, forget the academics. Like, well, I need functional skills. Like, how are we going to do these things? And because I think there's a period of time where, like in early childhood, yeah, Rachel's working on those things. And then, they try to hammer these. And then, like I said, they're in 9th and 10th grade, and they're like, oh my goodness. So, asking the parents, what is it like at home that you need, and then incorporating that into some of that information that we got from the assessment data, right? Is it making choices, or is it following a routine, or is it, what sort of things can we kind of do double duty on, and also help, support them kind of outside those academic pieces. But then obviously, I mean, certainly, like, there's a place for it, right? I mean, we're in the public school system, so we can't completely discount those things, but certainly, these assessments give us the information to shape it into conventional and intentional communication. And I think that's what's really great about these, is we can take something, whether it's positive or negative, the head thing, or a bucket of cold water, or, whatever, they're going to give us a reaction. And then we can start turning that into something that everybody understands, because they are communicating, just not in the way that maybe you or a non-educator, or someone who's not familiar with that population would understand. So, I think that's definitely the next lead in, is how to write those goals and what to do with that assessment information.
Yes, please. I think all of us, we want to know how can we make these goals relevant, achievable, and I guess effective?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. It's funny, I often come up with my best goal ideas or therapy activities when I'm washing my hair in the shower. So when my water bill is higher, I know I've been thinking a lot more, and
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So the hard thing about it, though, is that it doesn't always happen immediately, right? Like, you think about, okay, well, I have goals coming for this kid. You cannot wait and think and put the pressure on for these kids, because then ideas don't come to you as well. And I can't tell you how many goals I've written, and it's like, oh, this is such a great goal. And then I get in the room to work on the goal, and I'm like, why did I write this goal this way? I can't measure it, or this isn't functional to work on, but it sounded so good at the ARD meeting. And then it's like, oh, well, are we tied to this for a year, or do we go back, and change it through a revision? Like, I don't want to do that either, so it's just one of those things where you gotta put in the thought to make it work. But when coming up with a goal, you got to make it successful, you have to collaborate with the classroom teacher, parents. You got to know, what do you think the student is capable of getting in a year's time, and talking with other people, and just knowing your student. I think, going in, and you got to, I sometimes have to remind myself, speech therapy is going in and playing with my students. And it's not always about taking data every single session. And it's not only about hitting this goal for 10 minutes, but it's going in and working on functional communication, and what is that for that student. And it's so different for every student. But when writing a goal, I find the most success in goal writing and working on when we keep it really as broad as we can. their preferences change just like anybody else. Their likes, their dislikes change. So I like to keep it pretty broad. And I also like to keep it so where I can work on it in any part of the classroom, right? So it doesn't just have to be at the speech table. It could be coming in and working on requesting in different parts of the classroom. So it could be at small group, at science, at history, at PE. Because if right now they're really liking throwing the ball back and forth with their peer or PE partner, then we can go and request that in PE. But sometimes if they really like, doing this one specific science experiment and we're working on requesting and they want to do more of it, then we can go in and work on it at science. And obviously, that takes up, you got to be flexible in your schedule to make that happen. But I think keeping goals as broad as possible allows me to target the most forms of communication: requesting, saying no, protesting, asking for help, making choices, all very common skills that we work on. But yeah, keeping it broad for me is key.
I would agree, Rach. And I think what's great about doing, and similarly, I would write goals in that way at the secondary level. I think what's great too by doing that is you can go in during science or lunch or whatever, and the teacher can see you modeling in these variety of settings, right? So not only is it beneficial to the student to have those opportunities, but it's showing our teachers how to elicit language in those situations as well, whether it's related to the curriculum or leisure activity or, whatever it is. So I do the same thing. And I think it lends itself to an easier service delivery model too, like just to be able to be flexible in when you serve them and how you serve them to get that variety. So I definitely agree. More broad to target a variety of language functions, for sure.
Yeah, so what I've picked up is I love you start by collaborating, because obviously we want we want everybody to working on it. So it is good to get the input of both the campus and families. Then I'm hearing be broad, right? Not be so specific that you can only target one thing, but be broader. And then I'm hearing be flexible. Yeah. And I think sometimes we get stuck on wanting to write really specific goals, so how do we navigate that if we're in a school district that wants very specific, or a parent that has maybe an advocate that says, I want to have specifically, where are you going to be doing this goal? There's sometimes we get a little pushback on that. How would we write that? How do we support what we're wanting this goal to do?
Yeah, so I think going into it knowing, having an idea of, okay, well, this is how the goal is written and this is how I plan to target it. I do have the flexibility to change it if I need to. But I also think that having really good progress reports is key to having a broad goal, because then you can explain what's going on in these different situations, where the child is working on it. I have a goal that I wrote that I like, and it's, the student will initiate a communication attempt using a voice output device or verbalization in different areas of the classroom setting. So, not only are we working on that initiating communication, but we're also working on generalizing that communication to different areas of the classroom. So in initiating a communication attempt could be anything, right? It could be asking for help. It could be asking for something else. It could be saying hi to somebody. It could be, doing all these things. But when you go into the classroom, then you're free to model anywhere and everywhere, which research has shown time and time again. If you go in and model 400 and 500 times for a single word, then they're likely to pick it up. I think one thing that gets very frustrating as an SLP and somebody implementing communication devices is that people get excited for these communication devices for about a week, and then that excitement dies because the kid is not spontaneously and independently using their communication device like we all really, really want them to. But
right.
we're in this for this. It's like an ultra marathon. It's not just a sprint, right? Like this is for the long haul. And, people have to realize that and really buy into it. That's a whole nother thing, voice output device and modeling. But, I think, having really good progress reports is a great way to then be able to have a broad goal, because then you can explain what's been going on. And that's something you could tell an advocate. Well, hey, I plan to do this, in the progress report, I'll update where we're working on it, how we're working on it, and what's successful. So it's not just going to say 2 out of 5 opportunities. But I think one thing too, when you write a goal, is that you have to think, what is the end game here, right? That's why it's so important to know what the outlook for your student is, right? Like if you have a student with a certain disorder and you go to YouTube and you see people talking, verbally communicating with this disorder, then we can hope that we're going to get to be talking one day. So if we're going to talk, okay, then we need all these goals to get us to talk. And you can go to Google and you can see that, somebody with this disorder has a life expectancy of 10 years old. And so knowing that, okay, well, the game has now just changed, because we're likely not going to live an entire, a 70-year lifespan. But how are we going to make these next 10 years be really solid for this child and give them the best 10 years of communication that we can? So I think knowing longevity, what's likely going to happen, is also very helpful. Knowing what is the end game, what's the ultimate communication system that this kid can have, and how are we going to get there?
I love that. I love the end game, because it's sometimes we do need to kind of, what's the end game, and then work backwards. This is where we want to go. And then again, we're puzzlers. How are we going to get there? But then I do like the goal when you initiating a communication attempt. You said, I wanted to get that. Initiating a communication attempt. And then what was that second part you said? Because I missed it.
I think I said
Using his voice output device.
Yeah, using a voice out, initiate a communication attempt. Yeah, using a voice output device or verbalization.
Or verbalization. I like that. Yeah, because I was just gonna right, that it's broader, like, yes, we want to be using the voice output, but we also, because that's twofold right there, because that also hits when somebody is saying, oh, but I want them to be verbal. Absolutely, we're going to combine the two, because again, research has also shown that AAC does not inhibit vocalizations. Right. It supports it. I want to give a shout out right now to Holly. Thank you, Holly. She uses I've used the functional communication profile. That's another good one. And I have used that one as well. Thank you, Holly. Yeah. So we do have assessments out there, quite a few that we've got in the chat too already. So that's great. And then I love that our goals are broad and flexible. How do we make sure that they're measurable?
Rachel's got a few technical things going on.
Gotcha.
That's okay. So I think, the measurability piece comes in, the opportunities, it comes in the flexibility, it comes in good data sheets, right? And I think that a lot of times we'll collaborate with our teachers so that we're not the only ones taking data in this, certain period of time. It's happening throughout their day. So, for example, for Rachel's goal, we'll initiate a communication attempt. I think, because that can be anything, but they initiate and they get it, right? Like, and so I don't know, Rachel, do you want to chime in? And because I have in my head, like, how it happens, but, I think it goes back to her having effective goals, or no, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah. So for data, you asked for data collection. So yeah, when it comes to data collection, or like and opportunities or criteria. So I think it can vary based on your goal, right? So it's one of those things where, do you want this student to have, to do it 3 out of 5 opportunities? Do you want them to do it in 50% of opportunities? I think it kind of just comes back to depending on what the goal is, right? Like if we're looking for generalization, maybe you want it to be in 3 different areas of the classroom. So maybe they just need to do it one time, depending on what the skill is. Maybe they need to do it, 5 times in 3 different areas of the classroom. Maybe they need to do it, multiple times of the day. Maybe they need to do it in multiple activities or different activities. Maybe we're at the speech rotation table, and what we want to do is do it at speech, but do it in 3 different activities. So it's not the same activity that we're always doing, which also will help increase their preferences, and it'll maybe not increase their preferences because maybe every activity you bring in they hate, but it'll give them a different opportunity to communicate. So maybe they're working on protesting. I love this goal because what I love hearing is when a kid says, no, my speech time finished, or, we're working on protesting, speech time is finished, then their teacher asks them, okay, check your schedule, or do you want to do this? And they say no. And then their teacher goes, thanks a lot, Rachel. And I say bye, and I leave the room. You're welcome. But having a kid be able to say no to something is so important, because then they're not just stuck doing things that they have to do all the time, which is great, right? I want to be able to say no to certain things. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Oh, do I want to go? We're having a cold front come through right now. It's dropping like 30 degrees. Do I want to go outside right now? No, absolutely not. I will stay inside, okay, and sit with my new dog. So no, I don't want to go outside, but I'm able to say no. And in doing that, it makes me, it makes my life more meaningful because I don't have to go outside and freeze. So that's my favorite goal to work on, and thing to hear. Well, one of my favorite goals to work on. But yeah, so when it comes to what is your criteria, I think it depends on the goal. I don't typically like to write percentage. They'll do it in 80% of opportunities, only because, well, how many opportunities does that mean I'm giving them, right? Maybe they have 100% of opportunities and they're doing it 80% of them. That's great, and that's a ton. But if you're only giving them 2 opportunities and they're doing it the whole time, okay, well, that's only 2 out of 2 trials. So, but sometimes you need percentage. And then, yeah, sometimes you need out of opportunities. Sometimes you need per activity, this number of times per activity. Sometimes you need this many activities.
Sure. And I like also, especially collaborating your goals. So definitely having it across settings or in different opportunities, depending on their schedule and how much, I guess you're right. It depends. Are they in self-contained? Do they go out? Are they going, how often are they? Yeah. What is their availability for the different settings? And then I guess that would be also on us going back. Melissa, I loved it when you said, are they in the right setting? Brings it back to least restrictive environment too. I love that because that's what we all want. And I do love the protest. I started out as a kindergarten teacher before I became a speech path. So, that kids dear to my heart, the little ones, but you choose carefully when you're giving them a no or a choice, because you want to make sure that, both choices are okay, you're okay with.
Right.
Yeah,
that's huge. And that's something I've learned over the last 10 years is I have to choose my words wisely. Am I okay with this? But once sometimes I say something and then I think to the kid they don't want to clean up. And I think to myself, was it really that important? Well, it was, because I said it was, but and I think to myself, I shouldn't have said it. And next time I won't say it. But since I said it, you got to help me do it, so it's your words are very important. Yeah. You have to choose them wisely.
Yeah, it works both ways. Whether if you said, okay, we are doing this and then we do it, or versus, hey, you've given a choice and they choose the choice, you have to honor, because they have the right to their own agency. And how, especially this population, we're talking about kids that have multiple disabilities. How often do they really get choices? How often do people mistake their outward for their ability?
Yeah.
Right. And think that, and they don't get it. Yeah. Oh, okay. That made me.
I don't know if this is kind of derailing, but I always try to, and we're in the world of both Rachel and I on the Access for Connection team, but it's always kind of giving them a way out, right? Like, so I'm going to give you two options and a third one that's maybe none of those, so that there's always like I'm not really feeling any of those things. But I did want to back up a second. And, Rachel was talking about data collection. I think it also is really important, goes back to her point about being thoughtful about the type of goal that you're writing, right? So know if you need it to be instances or opportunities or initiations or declinations or whatever it needs to be. Like, your data is going to come from, or to take the data is going to really, it's going to be driven by how you write that goal in the first place. So when you're writing, make sure it's thoughtful. It's not just like a canned, kind of what maybe just make sure it's individualized, I guess is the point.
It's
But
not
like it'll
from a
really
goal
help.
bank.
It'll really help when you come to having to take that data piece, if the goal is written to the need of the kiddo.
And Holly asked if you have any particular data collection sheets that you guys prefer for various criterias. I think we just lost Rachel, but she's going to pop back on.
Yeah, she said her computer's restarting. I tend to make customized ones.
Okay.
As the goal is, but I don't know if I had some, like, could we?
If you had some that you like, if you and Rachel have some specific sheets that you like, if you want to send them to me, I will make sure they get connect. So Holly, I will make sure, actually, yes, everybody and Holly, that if they send me some sheets, then I will make sure that it is connected to this episode and to like the show notes later.
Yeah, like handouts or something. Yeah.
We've totally done that before.
Okay, good. I have to look because I'm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. And we can also wait for Rachel too and make that request from her too. And I'll just remind us, I'm going to write a note and remind you.
Yeah, she may have some because she is still practicing on a campus. I'm exclusively assessment. So I'd have to go back through my previous sheets, but I might. And, I remember, I would tend to customize what those looked like based on what the goal is, but we get all sorts of stuff. So who knows? I'd have to look though, yeah. So, but she may have some because she wrote the example goal that she shared. So I'm sure she probably has a data sheet to go with that.
Absolutely. And Lauren has asked a question about protesting. I'm going to wait for Rachel to come back because regarding the protesting. So Lauren, don't worry, I'm going to come back to that. But I thought maybe while we're waiting, if we want to get into some activities, because I know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's our bread and butter. All right. Let me tell you, the team, Rachel and I, kind of started, and I'll let her share her story, but she had this fantastic idea for these things called sensory stories. So I'm going to let her go into that. But, we have pulled forward a lot. And I think in the same way that, you kind of have to be a little unconventional with the assessment and kind of do things that maybe aren't your typical protocols and the things that you are experimenting with, the probes that you're using. It's the same with these activities, right? Because, there's something that the kiddos like, right? Like I don't believe that there's a kid who doesn't like anything. And you've got to take the time to figure out what that is, whether it's building the rapport, whether it's the assessment, whether it's talking to the parent, whatever it is, right? So I'm not sure, Carolyn, when we gave you, did we link any of the handouts?
Yes, you gave me the link to the sense or the research or the reference for the sensory stories.
Okay, so that's Rachel's. I'm gonna let her talk about that. But so things that we've given to our speech therapists. We have, I'm trying to look here. So her sensory stories. I don't want to take her.
I'm sorry for all
good.
Have a forced restart. Why right now? I don't know.
That's okay. We're glad you're back, Rachel.
Yeah, me too.
I actually had a couple of questions for you if you don't mind if we can back up a minute.
So I actually logged in on my iPad, but I just couldn't talk, so I could still hear it. So I heard you guys were talking about data sheets.
Yes.
We have switched over to using SLP Toolkit this year, so I don't really have specific data sheets, but what I do is I keep track of, where are we working on a goal? If it's for a goal for a kid to work on a certain thing in a certain number of places, and if I had to make a data sheet for that, I would probably be, like an Excel spreadsheet where I would have, listed all the parts or all the places that we're going to work on something. And then in those areas of the classroom, what is said on a voice output device or using signs or verbalizations or vocalizations, and what is communicated at that time. So I would probably separate it depending on the goal. But for that instance, if we're working on initiating communication in a certain number of areas of the classroom, I would just keep track of every area that we're going to target it. And then, what is said. Certain times for certain goals, I will also have my teachers take data on the goal. So if it's something like, if it is a student who's verbal and they're increasing their expressive vocabulary by words, sometimes I just leave a sheet in the classroom. Hey, write down all the words that you hear the student say throughout, the next 6 months. And I have to take that with a grain of salt, because sometimes teachers and paraprofessionals get so excited. Oh my gosh, they said a word, but really they just repeated what they heard. So they didn't use it spontaneously, which is what I'm looking for. So I do have to take it with a grain of salt if somebody else takes my data, but I like for them to be engaged in it. So I might not use it for my word count, but I will use it and just know, hey, this is a potential word for this student. So that's another tricky thing, right? Everything is so individualized for our students in this population, and so are data sheets. Yeah, so I don't have a set data sheet. I find that making tables usually helps me at least see the data. So I would suggest trying that, but it depends on the goal.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, can we get into, Rachel was saying, or I mean, Melissa was saying about sensory stories. I'm going to put in the chat right now, the link for that. But if you don't mind getting into that, I think that's going to give us a great place.
Yeah, so sensory stories are like one of my favorite things to talk about, and what it has to do with being an SLP. Kim Patterson, she wrote an article. She's an SLP. I think she's in Missouri. I think she works in the school system, or she did at one point. And when I was back in high school, like I was saying before, I had no idea what to do with some of my students. I want to help them and I care about them, but just didn't know where to begin. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't an article I read until I came to early childhood. So I learned a lot in my first 2 years of high school, and what to do and especially what not to do. And I'm better for it. So that's good. But yeah, at early childhood, I read this article, and a sensory story is a story that is written or that you have that targets most, if not all, of the senses. So it could be a story about going to the circus. And when you go to the circus, well, what do you see? You see the clowns. Okay, so then maybe we have a clown wig or a red nose. So you get to touch the nose, touch the wig, put a bow tie on, at the circus. Well, what else do you see? You see popcorn. So maybe we have, nobody goes to the circus anymore, but I went one time. Yeah. So I wrote a book about it. So maybe we have a popcorn maker, right? So you put in the kernels, you hear it pop, you smell the popcorn. Maybe the kids can eat it. Maybe they can't eat it. But you can also feel the warmth of the popcorn when it comes out of the machine. Oh, it's so warm. Maybe you put it in a bucket. Oh, so you practice putting things in the bucket. You can touch the popcorn. What else do you see at the circus? You see lots of animals. Okay, so I can't bring in a lion, unfortunately, and I can't bring in a seal, but what I can do is bring in stuffed animals and the sounds that those animals make. So, maybe we play YouTube clips, or maybe we have a stuffed animal that you push the button and it plays the sound, which actually is what we do have. So we use that. Maybe, then you go to the circus and you see some carnival games. So maybe you've got, the big rubber hammer, that you use you push it down, and then the bell shoots up, and if you get it right, then if you hit it hard enough, then it dings, right? So we have the rubber hammer, so then we can feel that, we can practice banging that, we can hear the squeak, we can work on those fine motor skills too of holding the hammer and banging it on something. And then one of my favorite things with the circus book is the blow up clown that we have. So maybe we blow up the clown, and then we can hit it down, or maybe the kids don't like it, and then you see, oh, this is something else that they will want to protest. So a sensory story is something that is a book that targets all the senses. And now you're asking, well, where do I find those books? That's the burning question, right? They're not out there. They're not just around, just out there. I had a student, his name was Liam, and he was 4. Or I met him, I met him, I think he just turned 3. I think I met him when he just turned 3, and I worked with him for about a year and a half or so. But Liam had a disorder that there wasn't longevity, right? So he passed away when he was about 4.5. And he was the kid who made me learn about all these sensory stories, because I saw him in his home. I served him through the school district, but we served him at home. And I thought, okay, well, but I want this kid to experience lots of things in life that he likely won't. And I didn't know, if that he would pass away at such a young age, but because of sensory stories, he got to experience so much of life that he otherwise probably wouldn't have gotten to do, right? So I wrote a book about pizza. I love pizza. I want everyone to experience pizza. So we got to mix flour and water, and we got to smell ingredients, and we got to make a pizza, right? And so, we got to put an apron on and feel a rolling pin and feel a baking sheet. And feeling that baking sheet, I learned he likes that like hard, scratchy surface, right? So then I could bring in other toys that had the hard, scratchy surface. And I wrote a book about going to Disney World. And so he got to experience Disney World, which he actually had been to before once. So that wasn't his only time to go, but he got to go to Disney World twice, and I've only been once, right? So like he got to experience twice. And then we also did, a pumpkin patch, growing a pumpkin patch, living in winter which Texas winter, people laugh at us. But, we got to smell hot chocolate, and we got to, touch something cold because the snow. And, there's a book about things that are bright and things that are loud. I don't think I sent you the link for my books, but anytime I give a presentation, I'd love to share them with people for free. So I can send you that link, and then people can have access to them.
Is it possible to pop that in the chat?
Actually, I think I could, yes.
I think that would be.
I can do that.
Or you can send it to me too, but if you can pop
Okay.
that in the chat, I think we would be super excited. I mean, here's the thing, I love that we're a community willing to share instead of like, okay, I've made it, now it's mine. Let's share our goodies, everyone. I love this. Rachel, thank you so much. And I take it that the books that you're sharing are for the younger side, right?
I can tell you, I just pulled it up. There's Making a Pizza, My Day at the Beach. Oh, one of my favorites. It's my birthday, right? So like this is such, I love this book because there's so much involved, right? So this can be a therapy activity, or this can be a small group activity, a large group activity. This can be a week-long lesson too, right? Someone's birthday is coming up. Someone's birthday is always coming up. Okay. Right. I don't know who it is. Someone in your school is going to have a birthday soon. And so in that book, you get to talk about an invitation, right? So maybe the students all get an invitation and they can open it up. So they practice opening up things. And, if they can read, because they're in high school, more high school kids can read than early childhood. Maybe you're talking about the important details. Where is the party? Whose party is it? What should we bring to the party? So you're talking about all these things. And then it's so fun because then you could, at some point in the book, somebody knocks at the door, right? Knock, knock, knock. So then maybe you invite your principal, because one thing we find is that administration, they tend to not come into these classrooms. Why? I'm not really sure. Is it because they don't know what's supposed to be going on, or because they don't want to come in, or they just don't know, they don't have the time, they have to make the time. But maybe you invite your principal to show them, hey, look at what we're learning, look at what we're doing. Like, this is how we learn and communicate. There's students in your school too. You should come in and participate with us. So somebody comes into the party. Well, then of course, you have cake, right? And maybe you don't eat the cake, and maybe you don't have a real cake, but maybe you have a pretend cake to cut, and you've got plates and forks and cups. So we learn how to set the table. I just set the table for lunch I had with a friend today. And as I'm setting the table, putting the fork on the napkin, I'm saying this song to myself: fork on top, knife and spoon, set the table, eat real soon. I learned that from one of my 16-year-olds, my first 2 years of working high school. Okay. I would think about her all the time when I set the table, right? But she sang a song, and I remember it. So you're setting the table. So then at the end of this, towards the end of this birthday party book, then you've got your cake. So you talk about, oh, okay, well, maybe you smell a vanilla candle that I have in my kit. So you smell the cake if you can't eat the cake. Maybe you're touching flour if you can, because that goes into a cake. Maybe you have ice cream with your cake. So either you eat some ice cream or you don't, but you touch something cold. And then it's gift time, right? So like, this is my favorite thing because then you clean out the junk that you have been accumulating in your office, all these little trinket toys that kids love because it's cool as when you're a kid. You wrap it up in tissue paper. Well, then everybody gets to open up a gift and take it home. Hey, that's great. And then, and then at the end, okay, well, what do you do? Well, you should write a thank you note. I know that's a dying art now, but you should. And so then maybe after the lesson, if that's something to work on, and maybe this goes into a classroom lesson too, maybe it's not all speech, but then you can write a lesson. Oh, thanks for coming to my party. Oh, thank you, Miss Grinnell. Thanks for the elephant that you gave me, the little plastic elephant that you gave me that I've had for 5 years sitting in a basket. So it's just something, but it ties in so much because it's a sensory experience. It's an experience of something that you have in life, and you get to do something with it. So let me get that link. I'll pop it in.
I love it. And one thing, but okay, what I did once, I did this every week when I was a kindergarten teacher. I gift wrapped the book of that we were going to have that week. I gift wrapped it because that was our gift for the week. And then the kids took turns ripping off little bits, and we were we're seeing if we could predict what the book was about. That just popped in my head. I loved doing that. So much fun. Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, everyone. It is in the chat. So those that are going to be just listening, it's going to be in the chat notes. So make sure that you go back and get all of those links. I am loving this. So much fun.
So some other books that there are, Let's Grow a Pumpkin Patch, Walking in Winter. It's the Fall Festival, the Texas State Fair, which Carolyn, you used to live in Texas, so you're familiar.
That was big.
It's a big thing here. Let's Make a Jack-o'-lantern, Going to the Pet Shop. That's one of my favorites. I love dogs so much. When it snows outside. And then I'm always in the process of writing more books. As I write more, I'll drop them in, but I don't write them very quickly. There's one about camping that's almost done. And then there's one about, what was the other one? I don't remember, but we're working, something about the springtime. Yeah. So that hopefully will be done.
I'm just
soon.
curious, do you post these like on social media or anywhere else? Okay. We just have to find you. Okay. We'll just have to.
Yeah.
All right,
Google my name. Shoot me an email. Yeah.
All right, everyone, you heard her. Google her, Rachel Grinnell, and get those new books as they come out. They sounds wonderful. Melissa, would you use these books in secondary as well?
So Rachel came by after I had left my secondary, but yes, and I will say, okay, a couple things. One, when we did this presentation, or when we talked about sensory stories to our district SLPs, we asked for topics, and we had some secondary people kind of chime in with different stories, and I think some of them related to like work tasks or more functional routines, stuff like that. So again, like they are, because each one is handcrafted by the lovely Miss Grinnell, that it's a process. And I don't know if any of our SLPs in our district have made their own. It's possible, and we should ask them to pop them in there if they had, because we have done this. So, but yes, certainly, particularly those ones like the happy birthday one that it could target a lot of student needs from lower to higher. It can span, like Rachel said, across a day. It could be as quick or as long as you need it to be. So that one is like really, really versatile, but I mean, really any of the boxes. But I also put in here a couple links for a few other things that we have used. There's a website for print key ROM Romich or printrom.com. There's some implementation activities where like essentially it has an activity and it gives you like all the steps to it and the materials, and there's books and there's things that go back years, like 22, 3, so on and so forth. Also, Assistiveware has 5-minute fillers. So again, like you've got an activity and it'll give you the core. It'll either, it organizes it in 2 ways. It either organizes it by core word, or it organizes it into which like language function you can target and the words that you can use. And then we also use, especially in this population or in these classes with this population, power links. And those really help with the assistive technology piece, but also giving them control of their environment, accessing anything that like has as a switch, right? Like, so the power link, you could plug the blender in and you can plug the switch in, and then the kid can activate the blender. They can blend their own food, or we had one of our teammates went and did a slime lesson, and so they're using this PowerLink for a variety of fans or lights or switches to be able to participate in the activity. And then finally, I put on here, I didn't have a link for it. It used to be Tar Heel Reader through University of North Carolina, I think is the Tar Heels, but now it's called Monarch Reader. And it's a crowdsourced kind of like people can write books. That may be where you find some more secondary things. I will say preview the books, because anybody can upload a book, and so it could be on a variety of topics, or there may be pictures that aren't necessarily appropriate for the age group that you are targeting. But again, ranging anywhere, and they may have some that you could edit or manipulate into some sensory stories. So you're not doing all of it, but maybe they've already done the grunt work of getting the pictures, or they've kind of started, thank you, Carolyn, they've already started the storyline, and you can just kind of edit it. But that's also a great one, because you can attach a switch to the program, and they can turn the pages of the books. So anyway, so those are just some materials that we've provided our speech therapists. And I mean, our district does a lot of great collaborating. So we've also had opportunities where, we've had like a share, dare to share kind of thing with them. But some of these are what people have suggested and they've used. So,
You know what, Melissa, I mean, I'm sorry, Rachel, I thought I saw yours and now I don't see the link.
I see it. It says to host and panelists. Let me try
Change.
copying
Oh,
hers.
everyone. Okay, no, it's everyone. Okay, so I do want to make just 2 quick points. I just sent it to everyone, that should work. And okay, so in my folder with the sensory stories, there are some data sheets that I've tried. I haven't made a data sheet for each book, but what I do is I put, like the activity that we have that goes along with that book, and then I would put the student's name on top of that sheet. And I'm not necessarily keeping data as I'm reading the book, but I might have a teacher or a paraprofessional write down. Really, I just want to know if the student likes the activity or not, because if they do, I'm going to bring in more activities that have to do like that. And if they don't, then I'm going to know. So either I can present it again to work on protesting, or I just know that they don't like it, so we're never going to touch it again. And then the most important question, though, and what I am such a firm believer in, how do I pay for this stuff, right? Like as educators, we do not make enough money to then go on and make these books, which can cost, a lot of money. Plano ISD has the grant foundation, which is a godsend, because you can write a grant, and if you get it, then you get money for that. So maybe your school district has something like that. Otherwise, maybe send an email out to all staff. It is amazing what people keep in their house, guilty myself, just because somebody might need it one day. And then that time comes and, hey, guess what? I've got it and I don't use it, but I kept it because I knew somebody would need it and they want to get rid of it. So yeah, so I can't tell you how many times something, you send an email, hey, I'm looking for these 10 items. Can anybody help me out? They're for these books, and, garage sales, you tell someone who's having a garage sale, consignment sales, maybe they don't give it to you for free. Try it out. You never know. Just ask. But otherwise, maybe it's a quarter, or now I guess like 75 cents. So yeah, so I'm a firm believer in don't use your own money. So try other things first. If you're looking for something, call me. Maybe I'll ship it to you.
Oh, and also there's something I'm now that I'm in Oregon, I've noticed that they have something called Offer Up. And it's a community where people can ask for things and it's for free, and people go on, or so it's called, the one that I'm involved with is called Offer Up, and people just say, hey, I'm looking for such and such, and people are like, oh, I've got that. Or people just post things like, hey, I've got all this, come by and grab it, or what have you. So there are a lot of free resources out there. But the other thing, how great to get your families involved too. And that would be a great communication piece in getting your families involved, saying, hey, our next, we're going to be doing this book, and I'm looking for, does anybody have any of this, what I'm looking for, because parents would love if they can. Not always, parents don't always have financial means to do something with a fiscal note, but if they have something that they can provide, maybe you're going to borrow it, or maybe they can donate it. And then that brings them into the therapy, and really they're part of, they're stakeholders too. So let's get them involved. I love it.
And then they're involved in what you're doing. And also one caveat, if you have some, like the going to the beach book, right? So it involves sunscreen, but it doesn't involve putting sunscreen on a student. It involves smelling sunscreen. So maybe, maybe, if a student had lotion, you could put lotion on them for the same sensation, right? Because you're putting lotion on your body. So ask parents if you have something and you're like, oh, well, I should probably ask them before I, do this, engage in this activity with their student, putting on lotion. Even certain fragrances people can be allergic to. So just ask and just know before you go and do these things. And it gets parents involved. So then they know what's going on in class, right? Like their students can't come home and tell them what they did.
Right. They can never say
yeah.
they didn't go to speech because you've got this communication going. I didn't mean to speak over you, but yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. We still have so much I want to ask, but we are at the end of our night. I have some thoughts that I am going to reach out to you guys about because I would sure like to get your brains again. This has been so great. Those of you that are listening, please go to the show notes. There is so many resources there that they added. So please make sure that you go to the show notes on that. But as we end for today, Melissa and Rachel, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. We are so lucky that we had you tonight. Again, Melissa, thank you. Rachel, thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having you back again. So many thoughts right now. I can't wait. I'm excited.
Awesome.
And thank you everybody that's listening today. All right, guys. Bye. See you.
Bye. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. Remember to go to speechtherapypd.com to learn more about earning ASHA CEUs. We appreciate your positive reviews and support and would love for you to write a quick review and subscribe. If you have indicated that you are part of the ASHA registry and entered both your ASHA number and a complete address in your account profile prior to the course completion, we will submit earned CEUs to ASHA. Please allow 1 to 2 months from the completion date for your CEUs to be reflected on your ASHA transcript. For our School of Speech listeners, we have a special coupon code to receive $20 off any annual subscription to speechtherapypd.com. Head over there to get ASHA CEUs for listening to this podcast and all other episodes. The code is SCHOOL20. That is SCHOOL20. Hope to see you on our next episode. Also, please don't hesitate to tell us which topics you would like us to cover in future episodes. To get in touch, drop us a line in the comment section or send us a message on social media.